WTOL 11 breaking news now.
You do say upon your oaths that you find the defendant, Dee-Warner, as to count 1, guilty of second-degree murder, as to count 2, guilty of tampering with evidence.
Good evening. A Lenawee County jury has convicted Dee-Warner of killing his wife, Dee.
The juror found Warner guilty of second-degree murder and guilty of tampering with evidence. Dee's body, his wife, was found inside a welded shut tank on his property.
And we want to check in immediately with Melissa Andrews. She was inside the courtroom, has been tracking this trial for us as the verdict was read. Mel, start our report tonight.
Well, guys, the family was very emotional. You could hear them crying. You could see them crying as that verdict was read. Dee-Warner showed no emotion as the jury delivered its verdict. The foreman, actually, we had kind of contemplated whether or not he would be the foreman. He is a football coach, so we thought he would be a good person to kind of galvanize this jury behind these very important talks. And those talks took 8 hours. You'll remember that there was a little bit of a problem on Friday when the jury had already deliberated about an hour on Thursday. They came back and we were told that one of those jurors, the deliberating jurors, had an emergency. But that juror was able to return to court this morning and they began those deliberations at around 9:20. At around 4:40, we heard that they had a verdict and they all came into the courtroom around 5:20 and delivered that verdict. The children, Dee-Warner's 4 adult children, have taken off. They went into a conference room to talk with the lead detective. The attorneys scattered as well. But we did catch up with Greg Hardy, who's been fighting for justice for his sister, Dee-Warner, for nearly 5 years now. Here's what he had to say.
It was hard to convince people, authorities included, that we knew what we knew. And so we just had to keep persisting until we could get enough people. And of course, as you know, the biggest part of that has been the public and their willingness to fight for Dee.
Asked Greg Hardy, what would Dee think about this verdict? He said, my sister would be thrilled. We don't have to call this justice for Dee now. We can call this victory for Dee. And you heard him speak, and this has been a big theme throughout this trial, is him fighting and the family fighting to get this case moved from the beginning, from the Lenawee County Sheriff's Department to the Michigan State Police. And they do believe that that was a major factor in getting this verdict that we have here tonight.
Melissa Andrews reporting live for us there in Lenawee County. We also have been very lucky to have with us a former Lucas County judge as well as Lucas County Commissioner Gary Byers joining us along the way. Some of our 6:30 shows during WTOL 11 Plus coverage. And Gary, we asked you to come in, and the one thing we were talking about is second-degree murder, obviously, is what the jury came back with. Sure. The premeditation, that was the hang-up. You even said a couple of weeks ago, you said that's going to be the tough part in Michigan law.
Yeah, obviously, prior calculation is very difficult to show. And they had basically what I considered a domestic violence situation. Again, domestic violence, it's an offense of control, not an offense of violence. And when the offender loses control, she was going to tell him that she was leaving. That's when the violence occurs. And that's not really premeditation. That's just, you know, the violence. It's a knowing act, but it's not the premeditation.
The prosecutors, they know what they have in front of them to try to prove this. They know the players they have on the field, sure, right, before they go and even play the game. So when they go to court, when they go to trial, how do they, what did they lack? What did they not do to try to get this across to the jury to get that first degree?
Well, they knew their evidence, and they presented it well from what I can tell. But again, being able to establish it, you might as well take a shot at it. Whether you can ultimately end up, I think the prosecutor probably thought it was likely they would end up with second-degree murder, and that's what they did.
Tampering with evidence, that seemed obvious. When you look back at the case that they were unfolding, we talked about the playbook, the week to week to week, what they were laying out for the jurors, not only talking about the anhydrous tank, where she was ultimately her tomb, if you will, but also talking about messing with the car, calling the cell phone, things of that nature.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong case when you put someone in a tank and seal it shut for years. I mean, if that's not tampering with evidence, I don't know what is. Yeah. And so, again, the law is nothing but common sense made difficult. When you look at it commonsensically, the jury did what they thought was right, and the prosecutor and the defense, they all played their roles, and I think the right occurrence has happened.
Greg Hardy there, and you heard it as we were sitting here, they seemed at peace with this, although this could come around again, right? I mean, it's life, but parole could be an option?
And there will be an appeal, and that's almost automatic in these types of cases. So yeah, what happens to the victim's family? That is a very large part of this, and that having that ending where they can focus on something and those answers to the questions, that's important. And the prosecutors obviously meeting with the family afterwards shows their sensitivity to that. That's very important.
Do you expect more civil proceedings?
I don't practice law in Michigan. It's possible, although I think they were pursuing it civilly to begin with, and so I don't know if that's on hiatus, but that could still proceed.
Can you even say best case scenario as we wrap up here? Best case scenario turn the way this ended for the prosecution? Best case for the state?
Yeah, I think the right thing happened, and I think the prosecution will be happy with that. The defense got to argue the points that they wanted to argue. They have some points on appeal potentially, but I think the prosecution has to be happy with this.
Former Lucas County judge and Lucas County Commissioner.
Municipal judge.
Municipal judge,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And you've corrected me on that before. But Gary, we appreciate your insight and spending some time with us.
Absolutely, Jim.
Absolutely. Kaylee, back to you.
Again, our verdict coverage does not end here. Coming up after the news at 6, we're going to continue our conversation with Gary Byers. Plus, we'll also be joined by a former assistant prosecutor and a former detective. All 3 legal experts will join us for a roundtable analysis. And Melissa Andrews will continue our live coverage from Lenawee County.
Yeah, that's all coming up at 6:35 on WTOL 11+. And we will bring you, of course, more coverage tonight. A complete wrap on WTOL 11 at 11.